All right, let's start off with our first big story. Some stakeholders have bemoaned the unending challenges facing the aviation sector in the past 56 years.
But former Director General, Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority Harold Demore has called for an act of parliament against violation of terms of agreement in the country. He said the act would ensure continuity and stability in developing the nation's aviation sector.
We'll bring you details in this report now.
In Nigeria, aviation predates the nation's independence in 1960. But more than 56 years seems a long time to formulate good policies, build sustainable infrastructure, strong airlines among others, to make Nigeria a force to reckon with, given its thick population and geographical location. This is not the case, and experts have continued to seek ways to improve the situation. This aviation analyst says Nigeria should put its house in order if it desires to make progress. It should begin with national civil aviation policy to tackle bottlenecks to growth. The new policy should reflect liberalization, which is pro-growth. It should be designed to empower the carriers, negotiate commercial partnerships with little or no interference from the regulators.
We have to have a strong policy, and we have to have a plan of how we follow that policy and the strategy. We can do it. Why don't all the political parties, the key stakeholders in aviation, sit down and meet so that irrespective of whichever party is in government, we have a plan that we want to work on, and at a target in 30, 40 years, that's where we want to be. We'll get there.
Undue political interference should cease. And we must enthrone good corporate governance in our system. It has to be transparent. If you don't do that, we'll be here today, we'll be here again tomorrow. Better next week, we'll be saying the same thing. This is what we need to turn the industry around.
We are also determined to ensure that our privatization laws have an irrevocable and irreversibility clause so that no new government can just come in and reverse what the previous government did with a stroke of a pen.
Others want the initiation of public-private partnership agenda as an effective vehicle to transform the aviation industry with immense benefits to both the country and the citizens.
Must be able to develop this airport. Today we are doing 50 million passengers per annum. We believe with the right things in place, Nigeria has the potential of doing 70 to 100 million passengers within 5 years, easy.
Why will government not leave those airports that are already viable economically? They can stay on their own, they can exist as a separate entity. Why not leave them and then give virgin land to the concessionaires and say, come with your concept, design, build, operate, and then transfer under public-private partnership.
Another critical ingredient to grow Nigeria's aviation is the provision of enabling environment for the operators. Experts call for the initiation of a regulated fleet consolidation process to strengthen the local carriers and improve safety. It is hoped that Nigeria's aviation would soon rebound and become that strategic sector, providing employment, linkages to other sectors of the economy, and spurring foreign direct investments to reinforce global production chains. Lillian Isemark, TVC News, Lagos.
All right, we'll be looking at the aviation sector and the performance of that sector in 2016. Joining us right now to discuss this is aviation editor, New Telegraph newspapers, Wole Shadare, and also joining us is engineer and safety advocate, Captain Dung.
Morning.
Good to have you on the show this morning. Well, let's start with you. The airline industry, especially Nigeria's airline industry, has been described as suboptimal in terms of performance in 2016.
Well, I would say that is extremely optimistic to say it is optimal.
Suboptimal?
Oh, good. Suboptimal is more like it. And I think, yes, that is a correct indication of what the realities are. Could have been better if we were proactive in some angles, but hopefully we'll find some time to x-ray what happened and then possible solutions.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a good background. We'll come to all of that. We still have a guest from Abuja that'll be joining us, but let's go on a break, and when we come back, we will dive into the show proper. All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast. And on this segment, we are looking at the state of the aviation in Nigeria and the performance in the year 2016, from the budget allocation to performances, to ratings, to perception, and all of that. We'll be looking at all. And we have in the studio safety advocate and an engineer, Captain Dung with us in the studio here. We also have Wole Shadare. He is the editor of
The New Telegraph.
the New Telegraph newspaper, yeah. And joining us from Abuja, we have another key player in the aviation sector. He is the Chief Executive Officer, Aerokeys Nigeria, Kudia Satumari. Kudia, good morning. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning, and good morning, viewers.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Let me come to you, Wole. The word conducive environment is a word that a lot of people use and if we take it into aviation, they say Nigeria is a hub. Nigeria, the environment of Nigeria is the position, the location of Nigeria, for every reason, it is supposed to be a prosperous hub for aviation. But there is no conducive environment for the aviation to prosper. When we talk about conducive or convenient environment in the aviation sector, what does it mean?
Having conducive environment in the aviation industry is making the players to operate without hindrances, giving them opportunity to do things the way they should do them. Like in the aviation industry, is not conducive for the airlines because you have high taxes, you have high cost of aviation fuel, you have a lot of things that are, conspired to work against the airlines. And when these things are not done, the airlines begin to face the type of problems they have. And when you say conducive environment, the government takes a very big role in liberalizing the sector, in making it very, very okay for the airlines to operate and be profitable. But what we have now, we do not have that conducive environment because these things do not, work very well for them to operate and be profitable. And that is where government needs to come in and make sure that they relax some of these policies, or they have policies that will help these operators to be what they want to be, to operate safely and to operate profitably. When these things are not there, the airlines begin to have this type of problems we are having. The government has tried to come into the sector in terms of provision of aviation fuel to the airlines, but we are not there yet. I think maybe in the next quarter we'll begin to see some of these things that they've talked about, some of these things that they promised to do. Then we'll begin to look at it if the environment is now going to be conducive for them to carry out safe operations.
All right, let me bring in CEO Aerokeys Nigeria, Kudia Satumari here. The Aviation Minister of State, Hadi Sirika, says the sector performed up to 65%, and that's way above average. Would you say that indeed that the aviation sector performed up to that figure, and with the 43% of budget that was released in the year?
Well, depending on which segment the aviation minister is looking at. In terms of the regulatory frameworks and the activities of the regulators, we will say that they are doing satisfactorily. But if you look at infrastructure, which is the most important aspect of aviation, I would not say that we have achieved the percentage that is being ascribed by the aviation minister. For instance, if you go to our airports, especially the major triangles, the Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt axis, you find out that when airlines are departing at the same time, for instance, 2 or 3 aircrafts may be leaving around 7:30. You find out that there are not enough infrastructure to cope with the security check, the clearance, and all what have you. And you will appreciate when I say that it's doubtful to give an overall percentage of 65%. But I can see a lot of efforts being done to make progress with regards to enhancing the activity in the industry.
All right, and let me stay with you, Kudia. A lot of people have talked about the issue of policies. In the report we played earlier on, we heard the chairman of the Senate chairman of aviation, Senator
Ben Murray-Bruce.
Ben Murray-Bruce, rather. He was talking about the issue of policies earlier on as to the way policy somersaults and all of that. What kind of policy generally should be there to make the aviation sector prosper?
Well, talking about policy, let me go into a little about what happened in the beginning of the year, talking about the government policy on foreign exchange. Remember, in the beginning of the year, a lot of complaints came in when foreign airlines were not able to repatriate their funds. And it resulted to a lot of airlines pulling out of the country, especially American-based airlines. They pulled out of the country, which resulted in the loss of so many jobs. And domestic airlines, we had instances where 2 of them closed shops. They are now just returning to operations. So some of these policies of government has effect on the overall operations of the industry. Look at the policy of airport concessioning that was introduced, that was mentioned, which they are pursuing. Look at also how we approach issues in the industry without looking critically at the effects that it will have. For instance, we're talking about closing Abuja Airport, which a topic that was dealt with a few days ago on TVC. The implications of all these things, I think when we're implementing these policies, we should have a holistic look at the impact, not only to the aviation industry, but to the country as a whole. Aviation is all about safety, then comfort and convenience come in. If you look at the issue of relocating operations from Abuja Airport that is being considered for work on the
runway.
It has a lot of impact, which can runway. I mean, which cannot be overemphasized. These are some of the things that we need to look at it holistically and also look at implementation of these policies, not only churning out good policies, but make sure that we take it one after the other and look at the impact it will make. We are not short of experts in the industry. We should try as much as possible to look at how individuals with the core competencies will fit into positions so that we can achieve results.
All right, let me take Captain Rwung Pam on the issue of expertise. Would you say that this government got it right by appointing an ex-pilot himself to actually head the aviation sector? Did they get it right in that department? And since the first plane landed in Nigeria, in Kano in 1936, where we have 22 other government-owned airports, if I'm correct, How would you say that we have really performed in terms of, I mean, we've been doing this for how many years now? Have we gotten it right?
No, I'm afraid the learning curve has been steep for us, and that is because of lack of continuity of programs and policies. I have to agree with Senator Ben Bruce on that one. Lack of continuity of policies, and if you are planning for continuity, there is what is called review all through every process you're doing. There's a Deming cycle that says you plan, you do, you check, and then you feed your feedback into the plan again. So that is something that appears to have been missing. And I'll give you one short example. We've been having Harmattan since we knew it.
Yeah.
It's a natural phenomenon.
At this time of the year.
It comes usually between, sometime in October, November, up to around April. We know it happens. And every single year in Nigeria, we know that the visibility falls below that 800 meters we need for our Category 1 ILSs. In 2004, the Nigerian Aviation Safety Initiative, at that time, we wrote a position paper, and at that time, our computation was that the airlines were losing approximately 100 million a day, that the airspace is closed because of poor visibility. We found out that same year that the ILS that was installed in Lagos is actually capable of Category 2. We bought an ILS that can help us land in that low visibility. But there are a few other ground services and equipments that are supposed to support and facilitate the utilization of that low visibility procedure. And one of them is uninterruptible power supply. The other one is the monitoring of the ILS such that it will automatically cut out its signal once it is out of a certain tolerance. And of course, we need to mark the holding point to have a Category 2 holding point on the runway. We all knew about this, and the MD of NAMA at that time was well aware of that. You would expect, if there was any feedback as to how much we lose every year, just look at 2004 when I would say I was in the spotlight with regards to what is really happening and putting pressure on the government. You will expect that after a couple of years, we'll think that we're losing so much money.
More proactive measures.
That's right, proactive measures, and continue the policies.
Okay, we'll have to take a break at this point, and when we come back, of course, we'll continue our discussion, but be reminded, you can continue to watch the show on TVC Nigeria on Concert Channel 190, DSTV 418.
Yeah, that's to tell you we're going out on TVC Entertainment, and viewers they can still watch on GoTV channel 45 and ACTV channel 510. So stay with us and let's go on discussion this morning on TVC Breakfast. All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we have been discussing the aviation sector in Nigeria. We have in the studio a pilot and an engineer, a safety advocate, Dung with us in here. And we have also editor of Telegraph newspaper, Wole Shadare, with us here in the studio. And from our Abuja studio, we have the CEO, Aerokeys Nigeria, Kudia Satumari, joining us in from there. Now, Wole, let me come to you on this. The issue of bilateral airspace agreement.
Bilateral air services agreement.
Air service agreement, exactly. Nigeria has about, records show about 78 countries thereabout, and Nigeria has. How adequate is that? Okay.
It is more than adequate.
More than?
Yeah, but what you ask is that, are we really making use of this? We have a lot of bilateral services agreement, which we call BASs. We have with so many countries, which allow flight operations between Nigeria and those countries. Do we have the capacity or capability to reciprocate this? The answer is no. And at times I wonder why we even signed this agreement, because most times they are even one-sided. Take for example, even when we signed the Open Skies Agreement with the United States, we were not ready. The American airlines were ready. We didn't have airlines. And they gave us time to get prepared. I think they gave us about 10 years. But even after 10 years, we were not really prepared. And what does this Open Sky stipulate? It stipulates that the United States can designate so many airlines to Nigeria. Nigeria can do the same. Until maybe 3-4 years ago, when we had ARIC operating to the US, we never had any airline. The American airlines were prepared. They were ready to even designate 3, 4, 5 airlines. They look at the markets and see if it is viable, economical to them. And we had Delta. Later we had United. And it was lopsided in the sense that we didn't have enough players to reciprocate that agreement. Yes, the likes of Bellevue were designated to the US, but I don't think they operated that services. We have so many agreements with so many airlines. And recently, the government signed an agreement with Qatar. And I was wondering, were we really ready to reciprocate them? And we're losing a lot of money. Yes, people will say we get royalties from this agreement. But I would have preferred if we have airlines that will reciprocate that. We have Qatar Airline coming to Nigeria, but we do not have any going
that direction. It's really
the royalty you are giving is a pittance compared to what
you would have gotten
if you operate that route. And it would have also created a lot of jobs for Nigerians. I think we made a lot of mistakes with signing some of these agreements that we really do not have reason to do.
Okay. We'll come back to talking about these agreements with African countries.
All right, there's more perspectives to the issue we have right here at hand. Now, a total of 19.85 billion naira was allocated to the Aviation Ministry this year. And the Minister of State for Aviation says the budget performance of the sector currently stands at 65%, while 43% of the budget has since been released. In the year under review, the aviation industry was characterized in particular by the scarcity of aviation fuel and lack of access to foreign exchange, as well as infrastructure deficit.
Now, most airlines were forced to buy a portion of foreign exchange from the parallel market. Domestic carriers had to cancel flights due to either scarcity or unavailability of products, which is selling above 200 naira per litre, the highest in Africa. And there were also stories of flight delays and cancellations, low revenue recorded by airline operators and regulators, hiking airfares, overheads, taxes and insurance premium costs. Now, findings show that the local airlines are hugely indebted to local banks and service providers.
Already, Lloyd's, the world's leading insurance market, had issued a warning to Nigerian airline operators that it might be forced to blacklist the country in the face of continued failure of some operators to pay their premiums regularly. Okay, so Kudia Satumari, what's your take on this situation where Nigeria, for some reason, just does not live up to its own part of the agreement? I mean, you just heard Shadare here say that some of the bilateral air service agreements that we have gone into have hardly, been of any benefit to Nigeria and Nigerians, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree with the last speaker regarding the bilateral service agreements that we have signed without due consideration to us being able to take advantage of our own slots. If you look at it, just like one of my colleagues said the other day, majority of our airlines, for instance, you cannot tell how many of them are member of IATA that has 258 members from 117 countries, which they pool together and are able to have services just like we have with the banks, where with any ATM card you can go to any other bank and draw from. We need to have commercial agreements with other bigger airlines, such that we will be able to, at least if we are not able to take advantage of our slots in the bilateral service agreements we have with other countries, we are able to glean something by having those agreements, commercial agreements, where using our local airline tickets, we are able to fly on them. But these have preconditions. For instance, for you to be a member of IATA, you have to pass the IOSA audits to meet some of the requirements. And these, our local airlines are struggling to survive the very harsh, difficult economic situation. For them to even operate the local flights are very, very difficult for them, let alone meeting some of those international requirements. So I think whenever government is going to step in, like they did with the bailout funds they have to have a very comprehensive and a thorough approach to who will benefit, how you will benefit. Instead of churning out those funds, you need to find out what these operators really, really need, and maybe have a way of approaching by giving them directly their requirement, taking advantage of maybe they need aircraft spare parts, make sure you provide and you pay, not giving them money and it's diverted. So there are a lot of things that we need to look into. Most of the time, it appears as if when government policies are formulated, they are formulated with the intention for it to fail. And this has been the case. Otherwise, government has tried and government has listened. When we had the challenge of the foreign exchange issue with the international airlines, when IATA came in and made a case for the airlines, government listened. When further case was made because of the exchange rate, government pegged an exchange rate for the airlines. So government actually sometimes listen, but the operators also should show commitment and really be dedicated and be serious about the operations.
All right, Dung, let me come to you on this. We remember the days of Nigeria Airways in the early 80s and all of that, where every Nigerian had a sense of pride in that airline. What is the difference between how things were run that time and how things are run now? What was present that time that is lacking now, really?
What was present then was that we had a little bit more transparency, a little bit more accountability, and less impunity. And with impunity, of course, comes complacency. People just disregard the rules and they are comfortable that nothing will happen. They get comfortable in that situation. And that is my position on that. And you would expect, and with regards to your last question as well, having a pilot and engineer, the current Minister of Aviation, as the minister is actually an advantage, but not a mandatory requirement. If you look at the Transport Secretary in the US and the Minister of Transport in the UK as well, they're not professional pilots or engineers. Okay. So there's a lot to do with the policies and a lot to do with the supporting structures and institutions, stakeholders, as well as the ministry where the transport paraphernalia is supported. Now, with regards to the current situation that we're facing, it is one that requires proactive measures, very strong proactive measures.
All right, we'll find out what those proactive measures are or should be when we come back from this break. We're looking at the aviation sector in 2016. Stay with us.